personal values orientation. Personal values orientation. Well, I'm going to talk about how to interpret those points and what does it say about your own orientation. And there's also a fillable version of this that is available. I sent it to Lisbel. And if you want to use it in your online environment by posting it, and I have tried this form in different ways. I post this and have the students fill out, and then I'll talk about the results, and then I divide the students based on their orientations. That way, each team of 4 or 5, they have one of each kind in the group. There's a harmonious person, there's a person who is very ambitious and wants to, there's a collective person, there's also an individual person, all that. So this could be a very good topic of conversation among the students as well as the faculty about getting to know your colleagues maybe, getting to know your team members, getting to know the other students. So if you would pay some attention to the screen now, I'm going to show you what it means. So if you have a higher score on the past, what does it mean? Let's say that you have 13, or whatever total. Does anyone have higher score in the past compared to the others? You do, okay, good. So what does it mean? It means that, and let me tell you before we proceed, that we need all kinds of people. We need people that are focused on the past. We need people who are focused on the future. We need people who are focused on the present too. So let's look at, and that's what makes up the diversity. So think about it. If you have past as your score, what does it mean? You believe in serenity, you believe in history as a context that you can learn from the lessons of the past. We tried this in the administration at my college, and many of the people in the departments said that when you have a new supervisor, the supervisor says, let's throw away everything that happened before because we're doing things differently. So you've heard that, right? That's a past, that's more like a present-oriented person. They don't care about the past, whereas someone else says, no, I want to hang on because we need to know what the history was like. How did we come up with this solution? So you will see this all the time. Past-oriented people think of the work as a place or the classroom as a place to establish and nurture and build traditions. So there might be students in your class. So would you like to share what you have? It looks like we have wonderful conversation there. So let's see what you have to share. Looks like it's interesting.
We're trying to put some instruction here because we noticed that all the results have not the same meaning because it's not easy. So we are discussing. We have number 2.
Yes, it's a very cleverly designed worksheet. You figured it out, right? It's really cleverly designed. It's not linear that, okay, this is who I am. Okay, now that we figured it out, let's move on to what it means. So there are students who like to build relationships. What are you doing for those students? There are students, they don't want to just come and say, tell me what to do, I'll do it, I'll graduate, that's it. No, I'm on campus, I want to get to know people. I want to get to know the traditions. I want to nurture something. The present-oriented people, and this can happen in your department, this can happen in the classroom, today is the only reality that matters. How many times we have a supervisor that says, don't ask questions, just do this because this is due today. So think about that. So workplace for these people or classroom means the here and the now. You will see some students that have a lot of energy, a lot of vitality in the classroom because they are the present-oriented students. They don't want to read the whole article. They don't want to read the introductory chapter in the book. They just say, give me the question, I'll answer the question. I don't want to look at my notes from 2 weeks ago because I don't believe in that, because tell me now. Then we have the future people who think today is a step towards tomorrow's goals. So they actually put in different types of effort in their achievement. So any of you have future-oriented? So you will see, you have both. So that's what makes it different. Let's move on to the next orientation, which is towards environment, nature, others. You have the page? You also have a hard copy of this. So a lot of students misunderstand the yielding. They say, no, I'm not like that, like, I don't give in all the time, but actually yielding means good. It means that you believe that higher forces are in charge of our destiny. And this is a culturally oriented view. And you bring it to the classroom in different ways. You accept the authority. And so if your professor says, this is a C paper, you get a C, they don't challenge you because the professor knows best. So you find meaning in actually adapting to the role or the influence whoever is in charge. Then there are people that are harmonious. They always look for a balanced and peaceful existence. For instance, in the department meetings, how many times there are some people said, well, if that's what everyone agrees, let's go with that. Because they might be the collective background people. To them, the group harmony is more important than my individual vision of something, or whether that is getting fulfilled. So in a group, in a teamwork, online, how are you going to divide your students by their values and tendencies so we have a real diversity in the groups? And I'll share with you what I did in my classes, and I saw a different type of result. So for the harmonious people, they feel that everyone contributes to the larger vision. It's not what I think. If the larger goal is met, that's important. Then we have the controlling people. Do we know some of those? The controlling people, they feel that my welfare is primary. If I have determined that this is the need of the department, everyone has to support that. Right? So they will take charge, they will overcome challenges, they will control task, resources, people, they will solve the problems. So do you see that an ideal group must have all three kinds? We cannot just have a group of controlling people. We cannot just have a group of harmonious people who will agree with you. We cannot have a group of yielding people. So same with students. We have to prepare them to participate in their employment, workforce, where they work with all kinds of people. Let's move on to the next one. Orientation towards activity. We have the people that believe in doing, we have the people who believe in being and then becoming. Do we have the doing people here? We have some doing. As you will see, we are so diverse. This is our individual tendency, which we bring to the workforce, we bring to the family, we bring to the community, we bring this same orientation to the classroom. Remember the iceberg. You cannot change someone in a semester. If that's what they are all about, that's what they will be. So let's make the best use of it. So the doing people believe taking action is the most important thing. We have to have accomplishable goals. So if you will be doing a disservice to those people if you did not give enough tasks. You know how some professors say that, oh, I'm going to give lectures and then at the end we are going to do this? The doing people will get bored because they have to have something every day or maybe every week. Same in the workforce. You must have outcomes. The task at hand is the most important thing. Work and play are separate activities. Those people don't like games. You don't say, today we're going to do this. No, give me the work because I need an outcome. The being people, on the other hand, like self-expression. They like to express themselves, be affiliated. Work and social interaction is closely related to them. Whereas the becoming people, how many people do you know at work, they're not happy because they feel they cannot express themselves. You know, I'm a lot more creative. This job doesn't give me enough opportunities to be creative. I don't want to work here, you know. Same with, if you talk to your students, you will see, if you ask them, why did you quit that job? They will say the same thing, that it was boring. What does that mean? Because I was not able to grow. So there are some people, some students, on the other hand, they like to have personal development. So work and self-discovery are important. So you may want to give them some questions on, based on this article, what changes will you make in your learning or in your, you know, in your view about something. So we do that a lot in the online environment as well. Then we have the orientation towards human relationships. This is the most misunderstood of the concept. Did you all have any conversation about that? Orientation about human relationships? You know how, and we'll talk about communication styles affected by that as well. There are some people that are individual. They like to do things by themselves. They like personal accountability. They like competition. And when I was talking about the service learning project, many students said, I'm not going to work on this PowerPoint if my name does not appear first. The students, they argue. I did a lot of work. My name should go first, not alphabetically. So my individual accomplishment is very important. So work is done for being recognized for what you can do. The group-oriented people believe that as long as there's a larger goal and I'm contributing to it, even if my name doesn't appear, I'm good. So think about it. What does it mean by ranked by position? Who can tell me? Ranked by position. Being?
Each member of a team has a specific task and a purpose.
Okay, that's good, yes. So basically, people like that, they honor you based on what your position is. So if you're the group leader, they will work with you because you've been designated as the group leader. So think about it. So a lot of people, they don't care if they're individual or group as long as there's a rank. So they will listen to the supervisor, whether they believe or not. They will go by the tradition. They will go by whoever is superior in the family. They will go by the hierarchy. Some people, even if they disagree, they do as the boss says, or the supervisor or the professor says. So it goes by the position, not by their preferences of values. So do you see conflicts arising from the differences like that? You see, anyone wants to share an example of a conflict that happened because of different orientations as we discussed? So now, let's see, and I'm going to hear from others as to what examples come to your mind with different types of communication patterns. So these are the cultural variables of learners. So by now, you probably understand that culture is not just ethnicity, it has a lot to do with the other dimensions. What you just filled out, the values orientation, is part of your personal individual culture. So you could be from the same family, but your sibling could have a whole other result. Your sibling could be individual, ambitious, you could be more collective, group-oriented. One person, so it has to do with your individual tendencies rather than in general. So students have to understand that. So even if you grew up in the same town, You will be different culturally, based on your generation, based on your experiences. So let's move on to the communication styles and how it affects the classroom. So today we are going to talk about the 7 types of communication patterns. And some of you, do we have any speech faculty who did speech? You probably, talk about communication patterns all the time. We're just going to have a little twist on the cultural aspect of it, because culture is essentially communication, and online learning is a whole lot of communication. So think about that. So the first one is the linear versus circular style. So as you see, look at the visual there. The Western style is generally, again, I'm not generalizing, but this is based on data that is provided through a lot of research that has been done. So generally, the Western style of structuring information is linear. You get to the point. How many times you've told your students, so what is your point? Okay, whereas the Middle Eastern style is a spiral. The point is there, you go around the bush. So if you ask someone, how are you? They will give you a whole story. You know, this happened to my sister, my brother was hospitalized, we did this, my sister-in-law came over in the morning, all those things, and you say, I just asked, how are you? So do you see how that goes, right? So the Eastern style is a lot. Do you see what's happening to the point there? The point is in the middle somewhere, and the student is going all around. And they're saying, and it happens a lot with Asian students, they will give you an essay, and you keep asking, where is your point? Where's your thesis? And they say, I don't have to state my thesis. I said all this. You figure out how this supports my point. So it has a lot to do with how information is structured, because in the Chinese way of constructing an essay, they're taught that it is a disservice to your audience if you were to give them the thesis. It's kind of like you are disrespecting their intelligence, as if they cannot understand the point, so you have to actually give them the point. So whereas in the North American style of structuring a paper, we say something different, right? So how does this cause misunderstanding? The circular people think that the linear people are too simplistic. You didn't give me anything, you just went straight to the point. So they think this person is so simplistic. So if the professor is circular and the student is giving a one-line answer to the point, guess what grade that student is going to get? The professor will keep putting question marks and says, give me more information, give me more. The student is linear. So you're not getting anything out of them. Same happens the reverse. The circular speakers have difficulty coming up with just one point, and the linear people get impatient because they think you're taking too long. I only wanted a paragraph. It happens in my class, like I asked them to write a narrative of 3 pages. Sometimes people have 7 pages. And I said, I didn't want to know what color shirt you were wearing that day. So they go around everything with all the details. So there's miscommunication. And as we do this, it would be good if you can recall instances to share with the group when something like that happened, so we can do some more sharing. There's also the direct versus indirect communicators. So if the professor says, or the supervisor says to the employee, this report is poorly written, rewrite it. It might really hurt someone's feeling because they are indirect communicators. For instance, somebody invites you for dinner and you don't want to go. What is your style? You would say what? Some people will say, well, I don't think I can come at 6 o'clock on Wednesday, no. Some people will say, I will try, there's a lot going on, I'm really very busy, I'll check my calendar, because you don't want to say no. So they are the indirect types. So what type are you? You have to find out what is your style? Think about the indirect speakers. They use a lot of metaphors. Has it happened to you? Here's a student who's writing a report and they're drawing comparisons, metaphors. For the indirect speakers, silence is communication too. So if the student comes to you and says, you know, can I get an extension on the paper, and you're quiet, what does that mean? You're not going to give the extension, but you don't want to hurt their feelings, so you're quiet and let the person understand what you mean, right? And it's kind of interesting because the background that I come from is mostly indirect speaking, and although I have been a faculty for a long time, when the student comes to me and the paper is not written very well, I say to this one time, I said to the students, just improve your introduction a little bit, redo the conclusion, improve these paragraphs, add topic sentences, and all that. And the student looks at me and says, my paper sucks, right? So guess what happens? The indirect speaker, you will say everything except that this is no good. This is a D paper. So these are deeply embedded characteristics, you know, which faculty bring to the classroom, which students bring to the classroom as well. So it causes misunderstanding because the direct speakers feel these people are not very honest because they're not telling me what is on their mind. Whereas these people, the indirect people, feel that I don't want to hurt your feelings by being frank and factual. What do we have then? With each one of these, we also have a little video, as you can see, but we probably won't have time to watch those. If we have time in the end, we will probably go back to some. The expressive versus restrained. The expressive speakers will share their sorrows, joys, emotions. As I said, like if you say, how are you? You will get a whole detail about the accident that happened 2 weeks ago. Whereas the restrained speaker keeps their emotions to themselves. I've had students that came to me and I was asking an Asian student, why did you drop the class? And the student said, the professor is totally unconcerned about me. And I said, how's that? So this person said, well, I went to the professor to talk about an accident that happened and because of which I was not able to, and the professor said, okay, go take your seat. So do you see what just happened? The professor feels dealing with your emotions is not my job. So the student might write a long email to you describing a lot of things, and you said, okay, get to the point. Have you done your work? So do you see, you are restrained, that person is expressive, and it happens a lot in writing. When you see generally some of the women writers' books, they have a lot of, expressions about emotions, and it's not to generalize, but yes, there is a difference between the two. So next time, and we will look at a sample, and I'll let you figure out if the person is restrained or expressive. Okay, some are concrete communicators, whereas others are abstract. The abstract communicators like to deal with theories. As you see, many times we assign research papers, and what do we see in there? This student has drawn upon a lot of theories, a lot of you say, well, where is your point? Like you have all these quotations and paragraphs, paraphrases, whereas someone else is more like a concrete communicator. They will start the paper with a personal story. If you're writing an essay about homelessness, the person will probably write one film that they watched and there was homelessness depicted, or during my trip to New York City, I saw this person who was homeless, and they'll start with that, whereas someone else will start with statistics about what percentage of people are homeless. Do you see how the concrete and the abstract people? So there's miscommunication because abstract communicators appear to be vague and out of touch with their listeners. Because you're giving me all this theory, a lot of chart, a lot of data, but I still didn't get the point. Like, what are you talking about? And many professors are like that. They like to give a lot of expert information that students don't get at all, and so they get really discouraged from the class. This is also a very important aspect of communication. The preference for risk-taking. There are some risk takers, there are some cultures that promote risk taking, some don't, and a lot to be said about it. Some of this is also in the article that is in your packet about web-based instruction, and they showed data on how the risk-taking, the other article about web-based learning styles or something. So you have that. How many times you had a student come to you and say, what do I have to do to get an A? So guess where that is coming from? They are from a culture, the parents send them to college, you have to get good grades. I don't care how, I don't care you're learning or not, the grade is important because that's low risk taking cultures. So, and whereas in many cultures, especially I would say North American cultures, we value risk taking, making choices. I decided to write it as a poem rather than a paper or something. So they will do risk-taking. They will make career choices. They will change the class. They will change the professor if they're not doing well because they like to take risks. Whereas others, like the culture that I come from, risk-taking is seen as gambling. So if I were to tell my parents that I changed my job, they will think, what's going on with your life? You know, when I was first year in the US as a graduate student, and every third letter I would send a different address, my parents would say, what's happening? You're not doing well or something? They're kicking you out of your apartment? Why are you changing the apartment so frequently? So people like to stick to one professor, they like to stick to one job, they would like to stick to one way of doing things because they don't want to try out different things. How do you know this in writing? Some students follow instructions word for word because they are low risk takers. And you go back and say, well, you could have put a visual there, you could have done something else, you could have added a list of references. They said, but no, your instructions didn't say that. Do you see that? So that has to do, the person may end up getting a lower grade because they're low risk takers. Why didn't you come to me and I would have given you this option? I didn't want to let you know that I'm not doing well in the class or something. There's a whole lot of dynamics that happens. Risk avoiders will do anything to avoid uncertainty. So if you are a supervisor or you are a faculty looking at someone's work, a student's work, you have to give them specific instructions if that person is a risk avoider. So because they will wait for you to tell them what is the next step. I didn't want to read the next chapter because I didn't know if you wanted me to read it. Have you heard that? I didn't want to go ahead and start my research without listening to your tape video about that or something. So that's, you got it, okay? Attitude towards hierarchy. This is a big topic of research that is also happening in education. Especially in higher education, we need to get more and more on this, how hierarchy affects our learning experience. There are some cultures where power is de-emphasized, where people can actually, like you can question the professor, you can give some suggestions to your supervisor, you can talk to the department chair, frankly, or all that. There are other cultures where there are inequalities. For instance, many of the Chinese students would say that we were totally raised with the concept that you do not ask questions to the professor. So whether in the class or in the writing, because it shows disrespect. It shows that you are challenging someone's who is higher in authority. So it happens in the family, you don't challenge your father. It happens when the scholar writes something, like sometimes I give articles and I say, do you agree with this author? They say, well, it's an author, I cannot disagree with this person. And they simply say, this is from the internet, so it must be, validated in some form or other. So think about how many different ways this hierarchy plays out. There's a lot of research that is happening in higher ed now that has to do with how students from different backgrounds, for instance, students who have arrived in the US, in a classroom, the students who have arrived legally have a certain type of voice. If you know better English, that person gets to take a lead because, this person knows English, so let this person be the team leader. So the hierarchy can be language. The hierarchy, I was reading a research on, the students also go by how you came to the US. If you came legally, if you were undocumented, if you were, if the level of English, the background that you're from, and all those things come into play. So if there's someone who knows better English and they say that I think we should write this on the project, others will agree because it's the hierarchy, that person knows English. Or if the person, how they were. So there's a hierarchy between the faculty and the students, and there's also the hierarchy between the students themselves. So they will self-select the groups that are of their own kind. So we have to do something consciously to divide them up so you see multiple perspectives of students. So there's a lot to be said about this. There's also a video that you can watch in relation to that. It's on your packet. And again, we discussed the individual versus the collective, the me versus the we. And it plays out in different ways in the classroom and in the workplace, in every way. Some students believe that my individual goals supersede the goals of the group. So there's a lot of conflict happening in the team projects that we give. Sometimes we don't see it, but it does happen. When students work in a team, automatically the person who wants individual honor or recognition will take charge and say, don't worry, I'll do the slides. And then they will put their name first. The people who are more collective, you've seen that, right? People who are more collective will say, well, as long as someone is doing it and our group is getting the point, it doesn't matter, do you see? So there's a lot of conflicts. Then they will come to you and say, can you put me in a different group? In the discussion forum, I also divided the students by value orientation, and I did a group leader thing for each forum. And I said, you're responsible to solicit the responses of the other members of the group. And so in terms of the collective, people say, well, I agree with what everyone else has said. So I'm not going to post anything new because whatever I wanted to say was already said. So there's a lot of misunderstanding between the two. The we people value loyalty and compliance, whereas the me people value individual uniqueness. And the same applies to the faculty. If you are a faculty from a me culture, you're going to say, why couldn't you have expressed that if you were not happy with something? Because it's your individual preference and you should have said. Whereas someone from a collective culture will say, I didn't want everyone to feel bad, or I didn't want to disrupt the dialogue by saying this because you don't want to. Like in Japan, they say that the nail that is rising high is hammered down. So it's a harmonious thing in a group to comply. So compliance is seen very positively. And as you see, many of the Asian cultures are collectivist, while Anglo cultures tend to be individualist. Do you agree? Generally. Again, there could be a student, like I said, based on your value orientation. It doesn't matter where one is from. Like I know from my culture, there are many individualists there. In spite of growing up in a very collective culture, they see there, even in a joint family where you have a head of the household and many people living together, some of the individual people, they will try to move the money in a separate account because they want their individual things, So how does it play out in communication? So one thing to keep in mind is in a linear style, if you are, so it's good to know which style you are. If you know that I'm more like a linear communicator, I like students coming to the point rather than waiting too long. So if you're linear, what should you do when you are interacting with a circular? The first day of class, you will know who is circular, who is linear. Do you? You will see from the very first writing. I just give them a writing and I say, my plan for success in English 101, and I know which one is linear, which one is circular, what. So you have to be patient. Do not interrupt too quickly. Do not discourage them because they will stop communicating them. You cannot say, well, I could never figure out what is in your emails because you say too many things and the point is not clear. They will stop writing to you at all. So make connections among the elements yourself and show the student that, how this writer is talking about this. So what do you think about that? So make those connections yourself. Direct versus indirect style. If you are of a direct style and you're talking to an indirect, you should look behind the words. Look at the relationship that matters. The fact that the student is even telling you this shows that he or she values you as a professor. Otherwise, they would not be even telling you this challenge that they're facing. So if you are an indirect person, try not to feel attacked all the time. Suppose you're starting a little story and the direct person says, okay, I get that, but what about your assignment? So you always feel attacked. So that's what happens when you're indirect, because you feel no one has time for you. Many students, I know many Latino students complain too. They say that my professor seems to be in a hurry all the time. They don't have time to respond. They only give me half a line. Even if I were to write to them, they don't do any of that. So keep this in mind. So, and they should also prefer facts to metaphors. Like if you're asking for like a scientific, fact, don't just tell a story. If one is indirect, they tend to do that. So keep this in mind. This is something that students can remember and we as faculty can remember too. So we have a lot of, as you can see, so what is intercultural communication? We each have a bubble of knowledge, habits, communication style, perception, identity, personality, self-reflection, and we are trying to communicate with each other. As you can see from the visual, it's a very, very complicated and challenging process. Okay. Are you familiar with the story Fish is Fish? Some of you are, some of you are not. Okay. So one of the things I always talk to the faculty about, why do we need to become aware of diversity and different ways of perceiving information, different ways of how we communicate, so we get more perspective, right? So in this story, what happens? There's a fish and a tadpole. They become friends, right? So they both reside in a little pond, and the fish and the tadpole become friends. So one day, the tadpole says to the fish that I'm tired of living in this little pond. I want to go out and see what is happening outside in the world. So the fish says, okay, go. But when you're done, come back and tell me what you saw, right? So the tadpole goes out and he sees the world. He sees trees. He sees children going to school. He sees all buildings. He sees, interactions, all that. So when he returns, he tells the story to the fish. And so he's describing their children going to school. There's such and such happening. And guess what the fish is thinking the whole time? The fish is thinking about all that as a fish. Do you see that? So because that's all you know. So even if you describe a building, you will think about, okay, the building might look like a fish standing like this, or the children will look like fish because they have no notion of that. Other thing is, same in communication. If you are a linear communicator, you're going to be looking for that everywhere. It's as if a good piece of writing has to be to the point type of writing, like because you're the fish, and so you're seeing fish everywhere. So if something is not a fish, you're not comfortable. Do you see? So we talk about this as point of view. So do you see that? Does something come to your mind with this? Like when you feel that some students or maybe some of us have a certain point of view, that there's only one way of doing things. And so when that is not happening, and that's the whole point about diversity, we have to see that there are many ways of doing something. With that, I want to transition to another study that was conducted in California. Many of the faculty ask this question. They say, but how do we know, which ones of our students have different orientations, or what are they oriented towards? So this study, this is a summary. The study was really long. So this is just a summary that I felt could be helpful for us. This is called the cultural values contrast. We share this with our faculty in different disciplines, and we ask them to agree or disagree with what you have experienced. So, okay, let's look at just a few. As you say, in America, let's look at the third one. Saying one will do something and then not doing it is understood to be a serious fault. Do you see that? And go across and see what happens. I look at the red one. Students should be active and may argue with the teacher. So we're bringing that point of view to our classroom. So if a student is not active, guess how much they get in participation, or even in the course, because we think they're not motivated. Whereas in the Middle East, students should be passive and never argue. In Asian cultures, again, students are to be passive and do not argue. Latin American, and I don't know if it is true or not, but yes, students should participate but not argue. Be polite, honor the professor. So this came out of the research study. Look at the plagiarism issue. In American value system, plagiarism or copying from a friend is bad. It is like stealing ideas. I'm looking at the red one. So we tell all this to our students. We say plagiarizing, do not do that. It's like stealing. Look what is happening in the Middle East. You might get a paper that was written by a friend. Charity is an important value. Letting a friend copy one's work is viewed as charitable. So you wrote a good essay and someone else says, can I borrow this? Yeah, my friend is failing, so this essay might be helpful. So it's charity. Whereas in Asia, imitation is a learning style. One copies by imitating the masters. How do you learn art? How do you learn art? What happens in an art class? Imitate, right? You show an object, you imitate. You show a master work, masterpiece, you imitate. So think about it. So we learn everything through imitation. We learn speech through imitation. We learn how to make polite conversation through imitation. So why is imitation is writing so bad? So imitation only shows that I'm honoring the scholar. I'm actually borrowing what the scholar said because I value. Because Confucius encouraged imitation. He said that we should learn from the masters. So also, again, let's look at the last one. Teachers are to provide information not in text, to structure learning and to provide guidance in research. Do you agree that's what we're trying to promote? Like, I'm in class, you've read the textbook, so I don't have to repeat what's in the textbook. I'm just going to guide you to interpret something, etc. In the Middle East, teachers are to clarify the text and provide moral guidance. So the student is sitting there thinking, you're not even telling me anything of value. Sorry, I forgot that. So student, you're not saying anything of value because you're not providing moral guidance to me. So it's no use. In Asian systems, teachers are to clarify text and provide moral guidance. Students are to get correct answers on tests. So there's a lot of emphasis on memorizing the texts. So you memorize the entire chapter and present it, and that's how you show that you have had a handle on the existing knowledge, because you're still in the process of getting knowledge. So you have to show that, right? So that's one hour. So what do you think about this? Also remember the very first one that I kind of skipped. In the Middle East, people and relationships are valued more than time. In Asia, it's the same. In Latin America, it's the same. Whereas in the American system, time is valued more than relationships. So if you're running late for a meeting and you meet a colleague and he says, can you help me with this thing? Or I just got this memo, I don't know what to do. You're going to say, no, I'm running late for the meeting, so let me go. Or the student comes to you and you say, no, I have another class, I cannot talk to you. But in other cultures, other than American, you will see that the relationship with the student is more important than the fact that you're running out of time. So again, that puts you in a lot of other issues. Yes?
I was wondering, is there any data about Western European cultural violence? Yeah, you have Americans, Middle East, Americans, but our culture, Latin American culture, and American culture comes
From the Europe.
Eastern Europe,
Mhm.
Western Europe.
Western Europe, yeah.
So I don't see anything. I don't know.
In this particular study, they only had these, but there are other studies where they are looking at, like one of the studies that I put with the web-based learning, that has a lot of the learner characteristics and variables where they put that. Again, there's a lot of controversy about studies like this because many others believe that, oh, this is not how it happens across the board. It has to do with where the student was born, where the how they were raised. Maybe they were raised in a different value system. So that's the reason the trend now is to focus on learner variables rather than on just the culture-based variables. Because if you say that students from Middle Eastern culture value relationships more than time, so if you meet someone from the Middle East and they tend to value time more, and so what we are doing is what we did today with the values orientation. So that is more individual, because culture nowadays is more of an individual entity rather than a collective, because we don't live in communities that actually nurture those values, right? Everyone lives in a different place. You may be born in, Western Europe, but you're living somewhere else, so you get some of those traits. Also, in the online environment, it is very hard for professors to know who is from what culture. Do you see that? Because in a classroom, even then it is misleading, because somebody might be from a mixed, group there, like their parents probably married across cultures. So when you meet someone in the room, it is still possible to see that they may be from this origin. But on an online environment, the only thing we see would be what you saw on the orientation sheet, like how they tend to interact with others, how they value time and everything. So yes, there might be studies like that, but this is an example of what that might look like. And again, so do you generally agree from your experiences? You do? Some of you do? So generally, yeah, I know there's always a question about these things. It's never like, complete. Okay. Now, time for another little activity. So now that we talked about different types of intercultural communication patterns, as a table, jot down 5 ideas how you can improve intercultural communication for better student engagement in your classes. And then we'll have a few volunteers sharing what you have. 5 ideas, 3 to 5 ideas on how to improve.